Welcome, everyone, to another episode, Even Your Dynasty Show, second live show. Bringing Dan back here. Welcome back.
Man, thanks for having me. That song was catchy. They only get it for 3 seconds, so the whole 30 seconds, I was bobbing my head, man.
I know. Yeah.
What's up, buddy? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. We did this last week. We do this every Thursday is our goal, and we have a couple off days lined up and a few consecutive Thursdays, which is nice. So we'll be able to kind of talk some Giants baseball on the off day, which is always a positive.
Yeah, always good to get a little bit of entertainment in when we don't get any to watch. So happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're gonna start with what's not the most positive thing, and unfortunately, that is the since our last episode the Giants got swept by the Yankees in a pretty brutal fashion, especially that last game. Showed a pretty blatant talent gap between the two teams. We also had them lose 2 of 3 to Arizona, including one that was kind of rough fashion in the first game of the series. Did break the 6-game skid, winning one yesterday. A lot of positives to take away from that game. I mean, I thought hell froze over when Jorge Soler and Wilmer Flores both got hits with runners in scoring position back to back. But lots of positives takeaways from that game. But overall thoughts. What were your thoughts on the last week of play? Good, bad, everything.
Yeah, it was a rough few games, no doubt. And I think, Bob Melvin being vocal about it and actually, kind of grilling into the guys a little bit was much deserved. And I think it lit a fire under their ass. Pardon my French. That's just, It's just the truth, man. You saw it on display. I mean, Wilmer Flores was hitting 212 coming into it, knocked a grand slam. Soler struggling, low 200s, only 6 bombs on the year. He was signed to be that power hitter. He yoinked one to left field. I mean, Ramos, we're going to dive into him a little bit more, but he's been phenomenal. He kept that going as well. So, I mean, yeah, they went through a rough 6 games. There's a little skid that, obviously wasn't pleasant as a fan to watch, and I'm sure it wasn't pleasant as a team and as a, player going through it. But it seems, hopefully this last game turned things in the right direction. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's hard because I agree a lot with what Bob Melvin said, where he said, like, up until at least that last game of the losing streak, where he said, I don't feel like we're playing that badly. They're just losing. And that's how it felt. I mean, they were just kind of finding ways to lose games. And that was the frustrating thing from that. A couple very winnable games that they coughed up. Terrible with runners in scoring positions, straining runners all over the place. Pitchers struggling to get any kind of length for a few, for a week there. It was a tough watch. I mean, and they get, a few guys are coming back. Conforto comes back. He's going to take some time. Austin Slater's back, which, we all have our thoughts on that. We're going to dive in on that a little bit without talking about his facial features. It's they're getting guys back, but on the flip side, you have to wonder, like, is it going to actually spark the team going forward at all? I think a guy like Conforto can help, but he's clearly going to take a little bit of time to get his swing going again. He played like 2 rehab games and that's it. And didn't play for 3 or so weeks. So I think he's going to take probably at least another week or so before we start seeing him look like what we're used to out of Michael Conforto. And Slater, I mean, if they're going to use him, hopefully he can hit lefties. I mean, that's what he gets paid for. If he's not hitting lefties, he kind of has no use. But we're kind of stuck with him. And the fact that they're leading him off is kind of a joke to me. I mean, the guy's hitting $140 right now. That was just a rough watch. But hey, he got on base for Elliot Ramos, who hit one about 425 feet to straightaway center and had no fear with that center field wall. So twice in this series against Arizona. So I don't know, man. Well, we're going to see, but it was a rough week watching the skid, and hopefully they can just start turning some of these into wins, and they've got an opportunity coming up in the coming series. So
Yeah, I mean, here's hoping that they can carry this momentum. One thing I didn't think we touched upon was Blake Snell when he going back on the IL with that left groin strain. I think he showed a lot of positives up until that point. So it was encouraging to see that, and it seemed like, all right, the staff's finally coming together, and then boom, back on the 10 days. So that's a bummer for sure. But yeah, like you said, we got guys coming back. Conforto, with those hammies, and it'll take a couple games for him to get his feet wet and get acclimated and back into the groove. So I'm not too worried about him. I mean, everyone knows my thoughts on Austin Slater. I'm not gonna mention anything because I got criticized for taking the face of the franchise thing a little too literal. But I mean that with all disrespect, or all with no disrespect, with all due respect. So yeah, so it's one of those things where if Slater's there, I mean, hopefully he turns things around. I mean, we saw 2021, he was mashing lefties. That's why he's on the team. He went 1-for-4 in his first game back with 2 strikeouts. So nothing was, too encouraging there, but Matos was in a little bit of a skid. So hopefully, Slater can turn things around. And I'm just looking forward to seeing Elliot Ramos just take the reins completely as that young outfielder that we've been wanting for so long and need. We thought we had that with Jung-Hoo Lee, and we probably do, but obviously he's out for the season. Then Conforto went down. Yaz is, being Yaz. So hopefully Ramos can keep this momentum going, and we can have, that one exciting player that we can look forward to on a daily basis. And I think it could be him.
Yeah. I mean, the way I've put it is, and sorry everybody for this, but the way I've put it with Elliot Ramos is he's probably the only guy in the lineup that I won't get up to take a leak during his at bat. So
Yeah.
it's everyone else. It's like, all right, whatever. Maybe Slater, if he gets going, he can be pretty fun to watch. He hits some balls pretty far, but I mean, Ramos, it seems like every time up there, he's doing something really good. I mean, he's bat flipping walks. I mean,
with walks, the 4 walks in a game, like,
yeah.
When was the last time you saw that? I think I saw the stat was, I think it was Dickerson in 2020 or something that did it, and before him, it was Renteria. Like,
they said Bonds has never. I was reading the Baggerly article today. They said Bonds has never even got hit or made it to or reached base 6 times in a 9-inning game. He did it a handful of times. I think it was like 4 or 5 times in games that went 10 innings or later. But I mean, that's pretty crazy. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, and it's not too many times you're going to get 6 at bats in a 9-inning game, but still, I mean, it's impressive.
I think Justin Vealey was curling his toes watching 4 walks from one player in a game. Man, that's speaking right to his heart. So
yeah. Well, I saw in that Baggerly article there was another good nugget where they said Elliot Ramos is seeing 4.32 pitches per at bat, which is actually it's like 14th among all qualified hitters, like anyone with more than 100 at bats, and it was actually even more than Lamont Wade, which I mean. Some of it has to do with the fact that Elliot Ramos has got some swing and miss. So, yes, he's got a good eye. He's controlling his strike zone very well, but he also isn't necessarily barreling every single pitch that's out over the plate. He's making great swing decisions, which is positive. And if he can cut back some of that swing and miss, I think that's going to be whether that's going to be kind of the determining factor on if he can take that next step to being, potentially that star player that the Giants have been so desperate for a long time. Absolutely. I think it's kind of awesome that it's Ramos that we're getting to talk about this. I mean, this is a guy that I think people forget, prospect fatigue is a thing. And I think people forget that he was a top 100 prospect for like 4 straight seasons. And he peaked as high as number 63 on I'm just going off of MLB.com's list here. As recently as 2021, I want to say he was in like the low 80s. He was like 83 or something like that. This is a guy that he was a top prospect for a long time. And when he came out, I think they talked about him more as a 5-tool guy. He's got too much swing and miss, I think, in my opinion, that we're ever going to probably talk about him as a 5-tool guy. I mean, yes, he's hitting 304 right now in a, not minuscule sample size by any stretch, but he's hitting 304, but some of that is going to be, you look at his batting average on balls in play, and he's hitting like 435 on balls in play. And you're striking out 31.5% of the time. It's like, how sustainable is that really? But, on the flip side, there's statistics out there that kind of prove that like the harder hit balls are statistically more likely to be hit, to result in hits. And he hits a lot of balls, not even just 95% or 95 miles per hour or higher, which is, I think, what they actually measure as hard hit rate. He hits a lot of balls 100 plus.
Yeah.
And he hits a lot of line drives. He hits a lot. He's starting to elevate some more. Even the grounders that he hits, he'll hit a ground ball up the middle, and then you'll look, and it's just like a casual 104 off the bat. So it's like, there's a reason why he's hitting such a high, he has such a high average of batting, on balls in play and everything. So, is he, in my opinion, he's probably going to be closer to like a 4-tool guy. I think with the swing and miss, like the hit tool is always going to be a little bit questionable, but there's so much that he's doing where he's got really good speed, as far as not base stealing speed, but like he has really good speed where you can tell he's got that great range in the outfield. He's got a really good glove. He's got a really solid arm. He's got clearly really good power. And, it's just, can he limit the swing and miss just enough? And like I said, I think it's awesome that he's the guy, especially with how Farhan kind of buried him for years. And it seemed like he wasn't really clearly a favorite of Farhan's, even if Farhan outwardly said things like, "Oh, I wish I got more of a look," and things like that. It's like his actions said otherwise. But
I think fans forget that last July he was blocked in favor of AJ Pollock. Like, that's how little Farhan thought of him. He went out of his way to bring up or to get a hold of AJ Pollock, and then that stumped Ramos from getting a true opportunity. And so it kind of frustrated you and I specifically, but a lot of fans that wanted to see him get a larger look at things. And it sucks the way that it had to go down with the amount of injuries for him to get this opportunity, but he is absolutely running away with it. It's a joy to see. And I mean, you pointed out his stats right there, and I believe it was on Giants Twitter last few days that he's 5th in WAR. It's in terms of National League outfielders, behind the names of, like, what was it, Albies, Tatis, Profar. Like, that's insane. So just him being mentioned in that, and that's with at least 100 plate appearances. So it's not like it's a super small sample size. So he's mashing, he's raking, like you said. If he can cut down on the swing and miss stuff, he's got at least 4 tools to make him a great middle of the order bat. And like you touched on, his defense has been phenomenal, and I don't say that lightly. His his outs above average are way high, his assists are way high. I mean, it's no fluke. He's doing it on both sides of the plate, and so it's just a joy to watch. And I hope that he can keep it going, because God forbid he goes into a 2-week slump and then gets Matos. So
I mean, and we'll get to the Matos thing here in a minute, but it was a very promising thing to hear Bob Melvin flat out say, like, Ramos has earned that everyday job, whether it's left field, right field. I don't think they're going to stick him in just one specific spot. I mean, heck, he finished the game in center field yesterday.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played center field since he was in like the lower levels of the minors. That said, when he originally was drafted, a lot of people that was the question, can he stick there? And, I don't think he's a great fit for center. He's clearly a better fit in a corner, but in a pinch, he can go out there and he's competent. Absolutely. And that's just that versatility. I mean, that's been one of the big, big positive things with Yastrzemski is, he's not a great center fielder. Like, he's not a great defender in center, but the fact that he could go play center and be about league average, like that's valuable.
Absolutely.
So, and Ramos, if he can be something along those lines, as far as when he does have to go out there, like, that's great. But I mean, he's really solid defensively in the corners. I look at him and I see, he's got all these different things that can be, potential faults with the swing and miss and everything, but I still think, like, he can be maybe a fringe Gold Glover in a corner, and a guy that can produce an 800 plus OPS. And if you do that, you're probably an all-star, or at least close to one. I mean, you're probably going to post anywhere from like a 3 to 5 win above replacement season. I mean, I did the math on I was kind of looking at his power numbers the last couple of seasons, because if you look at his overall counting stats in his career, he's never really put any like eye popping numbers out there.
Mm-hmm.
But last season, in the minors, because he came up to the majors, got kind of jerked around where he only would see limited time every couple days. They'd bring him up for a week and he'd see like 10 at bats. In the minors, he only played 67 games and he hit 14 home runs. And this season, he's only played 56 games between Sacramento and San Francisco, and he has 13 home runs.
Yeah.
And, you look at, and now he has 19 RBIs. I mean, you look at his numbers over 162 game pace in the majors, and I'm not at all saying he's going to sustain this, because this would be like legit superstar numbers. But right now, if you put his numbers in the majors on a 162 game pace, it's 31 homers and 118 RBIs.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't had anyone that can consistently drive in runs in forever, it feels like. Posey was probably the last guy that was reliable in that aspect. And I mean, it's a lot to hope for. I mean, Mark said it right here. Farhan motto is hope.
Yeah. Accurate.
Now, granted, that's what happens when you haven't really put the quality product on the field, year in and year out. It's just, hey, let's just hope for next season. But he's one of the few guys that genuinely gives you hope going forward. I mean, he's only 24 years old, and what he's flashing right now is, that of a guy that could be, a pretty special player. I don't think he's going to ever be like a superstar in the league, but, he could be a really, really good middle of the order player. That's probably, a potential all-star, I think.
I think if he continues at this rate that he's in right now, he could potentially squeak in as an alternate for the All-Star game in July. Just being realistic with what his pace is at this rate. If he can keep that up, I don't see any question why he wouldn't represent us in it.
Yeah. I mean, if he does this for another month, is there any question that he would have been the best player on the Giants through, 80 something games through the midway point? I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's hard. It's amazing to think that, but it's like, if he were to play like he has for another month, I mean, you're looking at a guy that might be, at least statistically, the most valuable Giant.
Yeah,
whether or not. So pretty crazy. We love to see it. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Slater and Matos thing. I have my thoughts. I think it actually has a little less to do with Austin Slater and a little more to do with how the team is not ready to give up on Yaz, because I don't think they wanted to keep Matos up if he wasn't going to play every day. And the reality is with Yaz there, I mean, I've talked with you about it. I've talked with the guys on NorCal Sports Network, where it's like there was a very clear path to how they could manipulate playing time and get all these guys their at bats. But, the reality is like they view Yaz as a starter, and they think Slater is more valuable as just a bench piece, and they don't want to sit there and leave Matos on the bench 5 days a week. I feel personally like that's more what the issue is. It's not necessarily that the team thinks that Slater is more valuable to them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on that?
No, I never thought of it from that perspective. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Because they like you said, they want Yastrzemski to play daily in right field, and they want Conforto to play pretty much daily in left. And at this point in time, it looks like Ramos has cemented himself, or he's separated himself from the pack with him and Matos. So it seems like, that makes a lot of sense. They're going to want, a daily outfield consisting of Conforto, Yastrzemski, and Ramos. So it makes sense that, they would want Matos to get more playing time, and that's going to be the reason, options wise, why they can send him down to Sac and get him that consistent playing time and hopefully get his, swing back, because it did kind of fade off a little bit for the last couple weeks. But I mean, if you want to look at it from a deeper perspective, I can understand it on that level. When it comes to a personal perspective, I don't even think Slater is one of the top 40 players in our organization. I don't even see him in the 40-man roster being better than anyone there. I don't see him being anything better than the 6th or 7th outfielder in, MLB and AAA. I don't see him
Yeah.
being any higher than that. I see zero value in the guy, and I'm not gonna mention anything about his face because I ticked off a couple people last time when I was referring to him being flashed in the face of the franchise. But I just genuinely, defensively, he's not better than Matos, Ramos, or Yastrzemski. Offensively, he's not better than them. Base running, he's not better than them. It's like what value does the guy provide? And people want to say, "Oh, he's a great Giant." That's awesome.
There's a lot of those.
There's a lot of them. Or he's great against left-handed hitters. It's like, okay, if you look at his stats from last July through this point in time, he's batting under 200, and that's including at bats against lefties. So he's not really mashing, and it's not like it's a short slump like Matos ran into. This is going on a year. So it's it's nice to look in the past and relish and have that fan adoration for what happened back in 2021. But it's 3 years. It comes to a point in time where you got to cut those loose ends, and I hope they do it sooner rather than later. And Mark touched on a good point. Why would you move Montes leadoff spot when he was hitting over 300 where he was, and keep him leadoff when he was slumping? I didn't understand it either. I know that in the minors, Matos did lead off. So I guess with all the injuries, they figured he'd be the best option, but he proved it day in and day out that, hey, I'm not comfortable in the leadoff spot, and we saw it for ourselves. He drove in almost 20 RBIs in his first week when he was brought back up. Yeah. So it's like, obviously he's that guy that you want in the middle of the lineup to potentially drive in runners that are on. So I personally think they should have had, Wade lead off before he got hurt, or Estrada, maybe even, Yaz. I didn't really see why they were batting Matos lead off. I think that overall just killed his confidence. So hopefully he gets it back. Hopefully, as a Giants fan, I want to see the whole offense succeed. If Austin Slater can hit 400 and run away like that for the rest of the season, wonderful. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to just be positive and optimistic, but there's no denying that the spark that Matos brought when he first came up is dearly missed.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, it was almost a mindset thing. You have a guy that's an inherently aggressive swinger. He unfortunately, he was kind of swinging at everything, and that was kind of the big problem. And he's got such great bat to ball skills that even when he's swinging at everything, he's still making contact with stuff. Mm-hmm. And, if you're making contact with stuff out of the zone, it's usually going to be kind of weak contact. And, that's what pitchers want you to swing at. And to me, you'd see him kind of get stuck in that whole, like, I'm going to take a pitch, and they'd groove a fastball on him, and he would then start swinging at everything else after that. Like, and it was just, I think it gets almost in his head where he's thinking, my job is to take pitches and work the count, but then also if he wants to swing, because that's kind of the way he is. And I think you have kind of conflicting mindsets with a player like him when you put him in the leadoff spot. I don't like it. He looked like he was up there thinking way too hard. Absolutely. And I was not a fan. I mean, I would have been fine with him even in like the 2-hole. I like his bat to ball skills and his ability to, situationally hit. But I also think he could have been valuable down hitting like 6 or 7, where he might have some good looks at driving guys in. And, it's hard. I mean, I don't think they put him in the best situation for success. Now he's in a spot where they didn't allow him to work through his slump. You get guys like Matt Williams doesn't really make any contact or comments on this because he's employed by the Giants and he's not going to say anything to piss off Farhan. But, you get guys like Will Clark afterward that sit there and make comments like, he's like, I don't like it. You got to let these guys work through their slumps, and we're not doing that. And, there are guys that, they can go up and down between Sacramento and San Francisco and still not let it bother them. I look at a guy like Ramos who, it probably drove him a little bit because he was probably ticked off at the fact that like he never got an extended look.
Absolutely.
Prior to this. And I hope Matos uses it as motivation. I hope he's that kind of guy. Yeah, exactly. Mark followed that up with, why would you put him in a non-RBI spot?
Yeah.
You're preaching to the choir, Mark. I have no clue why they would do that. It makes no sense. But yeah, I get that they're gonna they want to let him play every day. Like I said, I think the Yaz thing is kind of the reason why they did what they're doing. But I also wholeheartedly agree with what Will Clark said, where he's like, you've got to let these guys struggle. I mean, I think about how much better off the Giants would be right now if a guy like, rest in peace, but a guy like Roger Craig was running the team right now, where he'd just be like, nope, we're sticking with the kids. They're going to get their at bats. We're going to let them, figure it out. And in a couple of years, they might struggle this season. It might not be a playoff team this season, but they'd figure it out, hopefully. And in a year or two, you'd feel really good about the core. And right now, there's a handful of young guys you feel pretty good about. I'm still interested to see what they do at shortstop. I think that's going to be the really telling one. Luckily Ramos kind of forced their hand, where he's like, yeah, you can't take Ramos out of the lineup. But yeah, I see. Like I said, I get what they did with Matos. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it.
No, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I can see it from both sides. I can understand. The fan outrage was insane. Like Bleacher Report, Twitter, it was loud and it was nasty.
Yeah.
So, and rightfully so. So I maybe, like you said, I understand it from the perspective of, it's more so wanting him to get consistent playing time, and Yastrzemski being there on a daily basis, and it's hard to have keep Matos on the bench. So I can understand it from both sides. You did touch on the fact that that these people employed by the team or within aren't gonna criticize them, but I could criticize those that are employed, because it's just a little fun fact that those didn't read the Chronicles the other day when Shayna Rubin and Susan Slusser were like, yeah, I think Ramos's time is done. He's been all right, but his time's done when Slater and Ahmed come back. Nope, you thought. So it's great to see Ramos still succeeding, and like you touched on with the shortstop position, I think Farhan had a plan, and his plan was Carlos Correa. That's why he offered him a 12-year contract. And so now that obviously fell through, and obviously with Crawford gone, it kind of put the team the team in the organization in a weird position where they're like, okay, where do we pivot to? And it's a shame that they band-aided the position essentially with Nick Ahmed. So maybe they make a move for a shortstop, because I don't necessarily think they view Luciano as the future at that position. Maybe they make a move. We'll see, and I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit. What does Grant say? I love Matos for the future, but to be honest, he's way worse in the figured out territory, and he's not going to get consistent playing time right now in the majors. Yeah, I think we kind of touched on that, where it's all about playing time, and he's not going to get it up here. He's going to get it down in Sac, and it that kind of goes hand in hand with one of the things that it's always grinding my gears a little bit with Farhan in the front office. It's like they pick and choose which kids they want to give playing time and which ones they don't. They toyed around with Bart.
We talked about Ramos last year. I mean, you brought up AJ Pollock. People forget that Wade Meckler got called up right after AJ Pollock, and they would rather have given Meckler a look, a guy that didn't need to get added to the 40-man anytime soon. And I get, he had an incredible season hitting the ball in the minors, and he blistered through the minors. But I mean, again, it was another guy that was an unnecessary move
for sure,
just to block Ramos.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like they kind of pick and choose. They obviously wanted to rush Bailey up as quick as possible because they toyed around with Bart's for so long, and then toyed around with Ramos, gave him the Bart treatment for a while, and like you mentioned, brought in Pollock, brought in Meckler, anything to prevent Ramos from breaking through. So it's weird. I don't know if it's just fans can have their conspiracies about, oh, it's old regime guys, they don't want them, they want to bring in their own. But even with their own, it's kind of weird how do they handle kids and prospects in general. So hopefully this is kind of shot in the leg.
all that. I don't, because there are guys in the old regime that he likes, clearly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's handled a little weird. There's inconsistency, and I think that's kind of what's always grinding my gears a little bit.
yeah. And I'm gonna just my follow up for Grant's comment here is, I understand kind of the sentiment that he wasn't really playing great. I think it's clear that like they knew what he needs to work on, but it's also the alternative matters. And the alternative right now is Mike Yastrzemski and Austin Slater. And Mike Yastrzemski's hitting 214 with a 666 OPS. And Austin Slater is hitting a $140 with a 442 OPS. So it's not like the guys that are playing over him are doing anything useful right now. So that's the flip side of that is they could afford to let him try and figure out, because him figuring it out was basically the production you're already getting anyway. So that's the counter argument to that. Now, but I would rather see him play every day. If he's not going to play every day, just get him down to sack and let him get every day at bats. He still has another option here. This is, earlier in the year I said bring Ramos up even if it was in Slater's role, because because Ramos is on his last option year. And at some point you kind of got to, or get off the pot and figure out like what you have in a guy. And even if that meant him only getting 200 at bats the rest of the year playing Slater's role, that was better than nothing in him sitting in sack. Matos does have another option year beyond this season. So if he has to play every day in Sacramento, like it's not the end of the world. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. I don't agree with it. We all know, you all know where we stand, but it's a different situation than that of Ramos or,
Hey,
Bart.
you know as well as I do, Farhan loves his options. So he does. He will use those up if he has the opportunity to. And I don't know, man. It's just it's a shame to kind of see how it went down, but I understand it to an extent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump over to the shortstop talk now. We're gonna, because it's an interesting decision that's gonna come up here soon. I know Nick Ahmed had a bit of a setback. I don't know the extent of it. I don't know. I didn't hear how serious. I don't know if maybe you have any more insight beyond that. I heard that all I heard is he played one game in sack and then he had a setback. So I don't know what kind of timeline he's on, but that's something that's they're gonna have to make a decision on possibly soonish. A lot of people have been criticizing the defense they've had at short. I don't necessarily disagree that the defense at shortstop has left something to be desired. I'm not going to go off on Casey Schmidt. He's actually been really solid at shortstop between last season and this season. He had an awful game. I mean, clearly it was one of the worst, probably one of his worst defensive games of his career, if I had to guess, since he's been in pro ball.
Probably the worst.
Yeah, it's probably up there, but one game is not indicative of how valuable a guy is defensively necessarily. So it's, granted, if it was Marco Luciano having that game, everyone would have crucified the kid, but and if Crawford or Ahmed had that game, people would have made every excuse for him, but that's just kind of how it is. We're gonna get into that.
And I don't, even when Ahmed was playing on a daily basis. Yes, Ahmed is a vet. He's got that natural shortstop instinct. He's got that natural first move. He's got, the instinctual.
Reliable.
He's got the instinctual, tangibles that it takes to be a shortstop. He doesn't have the arm though, and we saw that on numerous occasions in April where it was underthrown, overthrown.
His arm cost him multiple runs.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Yes, you're going to get a guy that'll probably scoop the majority that are hit his way, but then it's iffy on if he's even going to get the throw over there. And it's like you kind of pick your poison because, we all saw Luciano, struggle with the glove and struggled with, the instinctual aspect of playing that position, but he's clearly got the arm. We saw that. That's someone that you can't teach. You can't teach an arm. You can teach a glove. You can't teach the arm. So, Luciano got a lot of hate, and I've been open about saying it for months now, even going back to last offseason. Like, hey, if you can trade Marco Luciano and you can get a high end caliber player by packaging him, so do it. Absolutely do
And
it.
we're going to talk about that here shortly.
Yeah, we are. But like you touched on with Casey, I think Casey's more of a natural third baseman. And obviously he's
Absolutely.
blocked there by Chappie, but he's more than capable of playing short if need be. It's just, again, he's a young guy. You're going to get those hiccups. It's just how it is. And then you can also speak about Wisely or speak about Fitzgerald. I view both of them as more so utility guys. I think Wisely's best suited for second. That's just my opinion. So it's just I think I saw or heard a stat yesterday or the day before where they've played 5 different guys at shortstop this season. So
they're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall right now.
Yeah, I'm just hoping it sticks. I mean, hopefully they come to a consensus and a conclusion on which direction they want to go. Because I'm sorry, I don't want to see Ahmed there.
Yeah,
him being
it's
able
no
to
disrespect to Ahmed, but like you said, the arm's a problem,
and the bat's a problem.
Yeah, the bat is a massive problem, and like this isn't the Dodgers. Like this isn't a team that doesn't struggle to score runs. The Diamondbacks, for instance. The Diamondbacks could afford a guy like that. I mean, funny enough, because that's where he played last season or up until last season. But like a team like Arizona or the Yankees or, the Phillies, like there's the Dodgers. There's all these teams that don't struggle to score runs. And they can afford to just punt outs every game because for them, the defense at shortstop would be more valuable. And for the Giants right now, it's like, okay, great. He maybe scoops a few of these balls that other guys were struggling, or he gets a couple of these, but the Giants, like, they can't score already. And we're going to take a guy that's a lesser offensive player and put him in the lineup when we already struggle to score runs. It was just, to me, that doesn't make sense. And I get we all want a great defender. It sucks. We were spoiled for years watching Brandon Crawford be a vacuum over there. And people forget that even before Brandon Crawford, I mean, obviously it was like Renteria and Juan Uribe and stuff for a couple of years, and Miguel Tejada.
I grew up watching Vizquel, man.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, and we had Vizquel for a year winning a Gold Glove over there. So it's like we've had a lot of really good shortstop play. And even Aurelia was pretty reliable over there. He's pretty damn solid. So it's just it's frustrating, yes. But at the end of the day, this team needs to score runs if they're going to have any chance at winning games. And I'm just not sure you can do that throwing 3 or 4 outs away every week or every night with Nick Ahmed out there. Even if we have to go, like, you and I made the case for Marco Luciano to take his lumps and let him go kick a bunch of balls, but figure out if his bat can develop. But even if we go with Casey Schmidt or we go with a platoon of him and Wisely or Wisely and Fitzgerald or whatever, like I would rather see those guys out there who aren't like complete negatives offensively and bring other things to the team, whether it's, Fitzgerald's speed, Brett Wisely's, Wisely's got a plus, he's got plus speed as well, but Wisely's swinging the bat well. He's really solid defensively at multiple positions. Casey Schmidt has some really nice upside where maybe he develops, maybe he doesn't, but he's shown much better swing decisions since he's come back up in his, 4 games that he's played. It's a small sample size, but what we've been seeing the last few days, like that's what I saw watching him in SAC. He was clearly working hard on that, except for, they called him up and he swung at everything because I'm sure he looked at it going, I have an opportunity. I need to hit. Because that's the mindset Farhan has put all of these guys in is if I don't produce immediately, I'm gone. So it's hard. I mean, I personally, I'd rather see these guys get opportunities because I don't see them being much less, if not less valuable in general. Like I don't see them being less valuable than Nick Ahmed. It's not like Ahmed was some otherworldly player over there.
Absolutely. There's a reason that, Ahmed was DFA'd. It's plain and simple as that. I think Grant, nailed it when he said right here, the creative was so good at the time because it opened up the possibility of trading Luciano, which is what I personally think. I think that's what Farhan's, bigger plan was. I think he was like, I'm going to transition from Crawford to Correa, lock Correa down for 12 years. Now I can flip, Luciano and probably get some other pieces in the back end here. And then once that fell through, I think he kind of, panicked and had to pivot a little bit. So I personally think, and we'll touch on, trade ideas as July gets closer. And even though, Toronto has said, oh, we're not going to trade Bichette or Vladdy, doesn't make sense. I think if you hit them up and you dangle a package of, Luciano, Wizenhunt, and Mason Black, and you dangle that, for a Bo Bichette, I think that can be pretty tempting for them. So I think there's, some options this trade deadline and this upcoming offseason to address the shortstop position. And, we'll touch on that for sure.
And I would do that deal in a heartbeat. The one thing I will say is Bo Bichette is not a great defender. Nope. He's probably below average, if anything. And, people are cranky about some of the rookies playing defense over there. And I just hate to tell everyone this, but he's not great defensively. So it probably wouldn't be a lot prettier at short. Now he's got more experience and he's probably a little bit more natural at the position. So it might look at least a little smoother, but he's not great defensively.
He's a lifetime 300 hitter. Yeah. He's a lifetime 300 hitter with plus power.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. If he hits, 300 and knocks 20 out of the yard, no one's going to care what he does defensively. Well, I shouldn't say that because Marco Luciano was hitting 375 and all people did was complain about his defense. So I will take that back, actually.
Hands of stone.
Yeah. But yeah. And Mark, I'd say the answer to this question is not enough reliable contact guys in the lineup.
That's the brutal truth, honestly.
Yeah. Even a guy like Ramos, a lot of swing and miss. Conforto swings and misses a lot. Wade is probably the one guy you could do it. The problem is it's like if the pitch is, an inch out of the strike zone, Wade will probably just let it go by because he refuses to swing at anything or expand his zone ever. So maybe Matos would have been a good option for that. Tyro will swing at everything. So maybe you run it with Tyro.
Jung-Hoo Lee would have been amazing.
Yes.
Hit and run situation.
Lee was the ideal because if you put the swing on, he doesn't swing and miss often. So he would have been perfect for that situation.
Yeah. And I think Jung-Hoo Lee also ties into not only Mark's question, but Pasiano's question. They brought in Jung-Hoo Lee to be that contact guy, to be that potential speed threat. Their envision for him was, hey, we're going to use him hit and run situations, probably drag bunt situations, steal attempts. That was their vision with him. And unfortunately, that injury happened. And then you just look at the team in general, there's not a lot of, like you said, good contact guys and overall speed guys. And Kevin,
we were nice today, Kevin.
I had to be nice, Kevin. I had to be nice.
I shouldn't have to say this, by the way, everybody, I shouldn't have to say this, but flat out, somebody pulled the race card last week on Dan. And I believe in the First Amendment. Y'all can say what you want to say, but I will say I also have the right to mute comments. So if anybody's going to start pulling the race stuff or politics or whatever, this is a baseball chat. I will just mute you on the channel. Just a heads up. So because Dan isn't, just shouldn't have to say it, but I'm saying it because apparently I did
for sure.
So,
but no, we're being nice to Slater today, Kevin. But no, like I was saying, it's just the lack of contact, guys, the lack of speed. And that goes further into my frustration with, Farhan never being able to close his mouth. He emphasized we want to get younger and more athletic. Where? You know what I mean? It's like
Ramos is the only guy they've done that with.
Literally.
If they stick with Fitzgerald or Wisely or even Schmidt's more athletic than, Ahmed, but like if they stick with one of those young guys, then maybe. Okay, you can say it at another spot, but yeah, they're still slow. They're still station to station in a lot of respects.
They're last in the league in stolen bases. Last I checked, they had 15 on the year. I think it went up to 17 now, but it's still last by a wide margin.
Yeah. They ran a double steal. Speaking of hell freezing over.
Right. It was a day to buy a lottery ticket, my friends, because Wilmer hit a bomb. Slater hit a bomb and they had a double steal and there was 4 walks by one guy in the game. I thought I was dreaming. I genuinely did.
Yeah. I mean, they went they stranded 16 runners yesterday. And they still scored 9 runs, so no one cared. But it was like it's not like they didn't have the issues still yesterday, but they just happened to get
there's still
a couple of those big hits. So, I mean, when you hit 3 home runs and one's a grand slam, that's 80, that was 7 of their runs right there. So,
yeah, I didn't feel a need to nitpick, so.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, so we're going to move on to kind of the last topic, unless anybody has anything that people want us to talk about here going forward. But the last one that was big kind of news, Jeff Passan dropped the bomb the other day that the Chicago White Sox are open to trading Luis Robert Jr. And I personally, yes, he's got swing and miss. He's got chase. He's got, there's a lot of things that he does that aren't the most appealing, and he's got his injury history. I mean, there are things like that with every player. There's always something that you're going to look at and go, oh God, when you look at those numbers, but there's also a lot that he does really well. Similar to a guy like Ramos, when he does make contact, it's elite.
Yeah.
He does have really good, he does draw walks still at a decent rate. He's a guy that's stolen over 20 bags in a season, and he's a Gold Glover. Yeah. And to me, when he's healthy, and this is the stipulation, because I've seen people go, he's not a top 10 player. And it's like, yeah, I mean, production wise, he's not. But I think when he is healthy, he's right about in that 10 to 15 range. Like as far as most impactful players,
he's a top 10 talent.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. He's a top 10 talent. And it's just he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But here's the situation with Luis Robert Jr. He's under contract for 3.5 more seasons. It's a very reasonable deal. He's a guy that the White Sox signed, early on to buy out some buy out some free agent years. He's under contract, I believe, for this season for $12.5 million. Next season for 15, and then he has he has back-to-back $20 million club options. So, if he goes in the tank, the Giants could walk away theoretically in a year and a half. But very team friendly. And Mark, we're going to talk about Torkelson too, because I really like Torkelson. He's a guy that I would not mind them doing. Now they have this love affair with Lamont Wade Jr., and I don't think they actually will do this, but he's a guy I would like. I mean, he's a former number 1 pick and hit 30 homers, last season. And there's a lot of upside with him. Now, not great defensively. He's also strikes out quite a bit. And, that's today's game, though. I mean, the swing and miss. But getting back to Luis Robert Jr., kind of the cost to get him, and this is just me speculating. I've looked at guys. I look at kind of the Soto deal where it took 5 guys and 3 were top 100 prospects. And, they sent Josh Bell was part of the deal. And I mean, it was kind of it probably was essentially like 4 guys for Soto. And then we'll say 1 guy for Bell. But, he was obviously a better player than Luis Robert Jr., but he had 1 less year of control. And the money was going to be more because of arbitration. And Soto was getting so much in arbitration. I look at a guy like Luis Robert Jr., and I think it probably will take Luciano. It's going to take one of the top pitchers, whether that's Wisenhunt or if maybe they like Hayden Birdsong more. I saw somebody suggest, maybe, I've seen people that said I'm higher on Wisenhunt than Harrison. Maybe throw Harrison in the deal instead of Wisenhunt. I don't think Farhan loves Kyle Harrison. I just don't think that'll happen. But he held on to him for any number of deals. But I think you're probably looking at Luciano, Wisenhunt, and maybe a guy like Luis Matos, who it would hurt. Like, that's the reality. You don't make these trades without it hurting. Like, if you don't feel like you gave up an arm and a leg, then Chicago didn't get enough back. Like, that's the reality when you make a trade for a guy like that. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that. Like, what would you be willing to do that deal? And yes or no, and why? Yes.
And I mean, it's one of those things that you and I have even brought it up as speculation and, shows we've done in the past. And it's before it even came out that, Chicago might trade him. So if he's on the trade block, you absolutely have to make a competitive Larry, don't make me laugh.
Donnie Walton is already on the team, Larry.
Oh, it's one of those things where if he is available, you make the call and you make a competitive offer, because like you touched on, it's not a Chris Bryant situation where you're going to get him for half a season and he hits free agency. You got him under control for at least 3.5 years. You can potentially have an outfield consisting of Luis Robert Jr., Jung-Hoo Lee, and a platoon of Heliot Ramos and Luis Matos. When was the last time we had a young outfield with such high upside as that? And that also becomes a thing where it begins to entice potential free agents. Oh, you get to have Jung-Hoo Lee lead off, and you got, Luis Robert, hitting in the 4 or 5 hole to protect you.
I mean, everyone tell me if you're serious about trying to get Juan Soto next year, which I don't think they're going to get him. We've all kind of accepted that. But if you're going to make the call to Juan Soto next season, don't you think it helps a little bit if you get to tell him, hey, Luis Robert Jr. is going to hit behind you, not, Wilmer Flores.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think if you have that opportunity, you make the call, dude. And I think it's a fair package that you brought up, the Soto trade. And I think you dangle Luciano, Wisenhunt, Matos, and just because I don't care for the guy throwing Wade Meckler, and boom, that's a great offer right there.
Yeah. And Chicago's going to want more major league ready players.
Yeah.
Luciano's shown, whether he DHs, he could be at the majors right now. Luis Matos could be at the majors. Wisenhunt's in AAA. I mean, they're getting guys up in the upper levels.
Exactly.
And that's kind of where I think it's a competitive offer.
Absolutely.
Is for a team that's looking to try and accelerate a rebuild. It's like, here's some quality guys that are up in the upper levels that maybe they don't help you this season, but they might help you next season.
Mm-hmm.
And, for a team that's trying to, for a team like Chicago that can afford to let guys like Marco Luciano go out there and kick 30 balls because their team is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
They can go out there and put him out there and be like, we don't care. Figure out if the bat can play. We'll move you later. Luis Matos, they can go stick him in right field and go, you might go through a month where you struggle to hit. Mark, you're not wrong at all. I mean, I know Farhan said when Soto was available, unfortunately, that was the year the Giants' entire top prospects all had bad seasons at the same time. And you're not wrong. It's what does someone else offer? And, a team like the Cubs who have 7 top 100 guys might just beat your offer flat out. So you're not wrong at all. That's the reality of it. But I think that's a deal that could potentially get done. And you might have to overpay. And I think it's worth the risk for the Giants because this is a team that has not had a true impact hitter since Posey.
Yeah.
And even Posey, as great as he was, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He had 3 or 4 years there where he was not great, especially offensively, where he had the hip injuries and stuff like that. And they were relying really heavily on guys like Hunter Pence and Pablo and Belt, who were good secondary guys, but not they're not the carriers that can help carry your offense day in and day out and throughout a season. So, Robert, he's a guy, he hit 38 home runs last season, and he's a 30 homer threat year in and year out. You see where he hits it, and similar to when when Slater gets a hold of one, and it's this ain't gonna stay in the yard. We touched on it a little bit last week. These premium hitters, premium power guys, don't struggle in Oracle Park. I mean, Juan Soto and Aaron Judge made Oracle look small.
Yeah,
it's.
That's why I'm tired of. So I'm tired of people blaming the ballpark. Yeah, it's big, but it's not too big for the sluggers. So
Jeff Kent didn't have a problem.
Nope, it might be big for a Wade Meckler, Austin Slater, but it's not big for a Luis Robert. So
yes, he was.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was last in 2012.
I was reading Grant's.
Crotchet's nice too.
Crotchet would be nice.
Maybe you swing a deal for both, and you end up giving up 4 top guys. I mean, it would gut your system a bit, but the only guy in the system that, and I don't want to say he's untouchable because he's not, because for the right deal I would move it. But
I know you're saying I agree.
There is one guy in the entire system that I would not give anybody, and that's Bryce Eldridge. He's the
Absolutely.
only. There are not many guys that I watch in the minors where I'm like, I'm confident that guy's going to be a star. I'm confident that guy's going to be a star. And that guy's power plays anywhere. I mean, he's hit like 3 home runs to the opposite field, which Juan Soto showed last season, especially when he was playing for San Diego. And he had a series where he hit 2 or 3 home runs to left field as a left-handed hitter. And if you want to be a very successful left-handed power bat in Oracle Park, you better be able to hit it to the opposite field.
Yeah.
And Bryce Eldridge can. I mean, he'll put it straight down the line. Yeah. Hasn't filled out yet. I mean, the guy he has easy power, and he'll hit it to center. He'll dead yank one, and he hits it a mile. I would not move that guy for anything. Now, like I said, nobody is untouchable, but if I'm going to trade Bryce Eldridge, like, I'm doing it as part of a package for like a young star that's cost controlled for like 5 years. Like, I'm talking like, if the Mariners were stupid enough to be like, we're going to trade Julio Rodriguez, like, yeah, okay, fine, I'd put him in a package for Julio, but I'm not giving him up for anything shy of someone like that, is my opinion. And
he's got legit 30 plus consistent home run power. And like, I touched on it a couple days ago, and Mark touched on it as well. This is Eldridge's age 20 season, and he's got legit power, and he's only going to fill in even more. And even Walker Martin, that's an interesting name to bring up as well.
Bryce is 19 right now.
Yeah, he's 19 going into his age 20 season.
Yeah, his birthday's in like October or something like that. So he's going to be, I mean, and Martin's in his age 20. He was an old high school. I mean, like Bobby Witt Jr. Yeah, like those are the guys that you make that move.
Yeah,
watching him play, I'm very confident in his skill set. I mean, and I could be dead wrong. A lot of people could be wrong on that one. I just like, you watch all these guys, and we have hopes. Guys like Ramos or Matos or Luciano, we all had hopes for these guys. Watching them play in the minors, I watch a ton of those games, and I never felt like, I'm confident this guy will be a star. It was like, he's intriguing. He does a lot of good things. Hopefully they develop. I watch Eldridge play, and I'm like, this guy is a freaking stud. Like, he is so good, and he's only getting better and better. And, Walker Martin is better than Bryce Eldridge. He might be at the end of the day. Who knows? He's struggling to make contact right now in the Arizona Fall League, or not Fall League, sorry, in the Arizona Complex League. That said, he hasn't played professional, or it's his first taste of professional ball. He hasn't played competitive ball since high school last season. I'm not putting a lot of stock in the swing and miss right now. He's a guy that's going to need time. I said it on my minor league show a couple of days ago. I'm not going to hold that against him right now. Once he gets to full season ball and they move him to San Jose or something like that, then I'll start paying a little closer to the strikeout numbers and things like that. But he's getting his kind of first taste.
Yeah.
With Walker Martin, I'm not saying he's going to be this good, but I look at Walker Martin's swing. It reminds me a lot of Corey Seager.
Very similar.
Just the style of his swing. Style. And he's got really good pop to all fields too. I mean, he could be a pretty special player as well. I mean, and in the deal that we brought up, like, you're not moving him either, and the Giants are rumored to supposedly they're going to get the top international guy this year. Now, obviously that could change, but Joshua Gonzalez, who's a shortstop. I mean, everybody from the Dominican and Venezuela, I swear, are shortstops, but he's a shortstop, and we'll see defensively if he ends up being really good.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to your point when you mentioned making a big trade. Like, if you wanted to try to get a Robert and a Crochet, whatever, it might gut the farm system, but it's going to gut more of the AAA level, if anything. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the most promising prospects that we see and that we touch on are in the lower levels. Walker Martin, Bryce Eldridge, Rainer Arias, Maui Ahuna. Like, you've got guys like that are in the lower levels that are far more intriguing. So I'm perfectly fine with, moving some of the guys in the upper level of the minors, packaging them with some MLB ready players to make a big, splash acquisition for some potential superstars. And then, your farm system might take a hit rankings wise for a year, but you got those young guys that are going to come back up, international signings like that are just going to fill that back in and make you jump back up. So I think it's well worth it. And why can't Marco learn to play first base? I've been mentioning that for almost a year. So have you.
We've been saying it.
I've been saying, why don't they move him to first? Why don't they move him to corner outfield? I don't know. he could be
too logical. That's the answer, because it's too logical.
It makes too much sense. Yeah. We're fake fans here. We don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree though, as far as your assessment of the farm system. Like it's going to hurt your upper levels, but there's a lot of guys that they've already brought up that are helping at the major league level. Guys like Ramos, guys like Patrick Bailey, guys like, whether Schmidt, Wisely, Fitzgerald, whoever ends up being solid out of that group, if any. Lots of pitchers with Harrison and, Wynn, and we'll see what Patrick or what Mason Black can do. He might get another look. We'll see with Snell being injured again. There's a lot of guys that have talent in the upper levels. I've said Hayden Birdsong needs to get moved up to Sacramento.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that's going to be a top 100 prospect when they do the shuffle at the middle of the season that they normally do with the prospect lists. He's been truly dominant in Double-A.
Mm-hmm.
And he's only 22, I think, right now. He might have turned 23. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but he's he's a guy that has a ton of potential. He has 3+ pitches. And, that's the one thing where I look at a guy like him and then I look at a guy like Kyle Harrison. Harrison has more carry and he's a lefty versus a righty, but, Harrison has more carry with his fastball and stuff. But then you look at like Birdsong, he throws like 98 and he has a plus curveball and a splitter that's a work in progress that might end up being his best pitch in a year or two.
Yeah.
Like he has 3 pitches that can get misses. And that can miss bats. And I look at a guy like that and I go, that's a guy that could be really, really good. And you see it from outing to outing with him. When he has his command, he completely dominates.
Yeah.
When he doesn't, it gets a little, he'll walk some guys and they give up a couple runs. But I see a guy like him and I go, if you move Wisenhunt, I still like some of the arms, especially we have in the system. That's not even factoring in guys like Reggie Crawford, guys like who, probably is a reliever right now. Maybe they'll stretch out later on. That seems to be their plan. Best laid plans of mice and men. We'll see if they actually do that. But he might get the Jordan Hicks treatment where he gets told like you can throw it by people, so we're going to just stick you in the pen for years, and then he'll get an opportunity elsewhere. But Crawford's got potential. I mean, shoot, Will Bednar went down to high A and he's throwing 97 again.
Yeah.
In short since. I mean, there's a lot of arms that are quality arms in the system. It's not as bad as people think.
Absolutely.
Like that's what I would tell people. I mean, it's not top heavy. A lot of people talk about the Giants. They just look at the rankings and they go, oh, they suck. And it's just the rankings put more value on top 100 guys.
Exactly.
And high-end talent. Yes, they are lacking in that. Like they have a few guys, especially a few guys that might move up the list, guys like Walker Martin, Rainer Arias, Birdsong, that aren't on the top 100 list that may end up on the top 100 list eventually, but they're not there yet. So they get dinged for that. And but depth wise, like I could look at a list from 2019 and I'm not trying to like give Farhan any credit here, but like I could go look at a list from 2019 and I bet you our 15 through 30 looks a lot uglier than they do now. So,
and like Larry touched on, there's no elite superstar level prospects at this time in the organization, but like you said, there's depth, and a lot of the
5 tool guys for sure.
Yeah, there's depth and there's really, really good potential guys in the lower levels, and that's why I'm all for packaging some of the higher level guys into a deal for some superstars. And a lot of people forget, I mean, this is kind of going off topic to an extent, but a lot of these vets that are on our team currently, a lot of their contracts expire after this year. There's a lot of money that's opening up. There's a lot of positions on the field that are going to open up. There's a lot of positions on the bench that are going to open up. And depending whether, they proceed with some of those team options and these guys or re-sign them is to be determined. But there's a lot of options on the table from a front office perspective. I think they need to take a look at what Tom said. You gentlemen seem to know what the Giants have in the system. Do they have the talent to be impactful, or it take a lot of time in trades? I think we kind of touched on that. A lot of the talent that I see and that I focus on particularly are on the lower levels of the system that are probably 2, 3, 4 years out. Any trades, yeah, that's why I touched on the fact, like, some of the guys that are in SAC or in AA, they're guys that are maybe a year out from being MLB ready. I think those are guys that I would package into a trade.
Yeah. Well, and you never know who's going to be impactful. I mean, that's the reality. It's hard. Did anybody have Elliot Ramos being a breakout star on their bingo card this year? Like, you don't know. I mean, you get these toolsy guys. There are a few guys that are, that have those tools that if they figure it out, they could. A guy like Hunter Bishop, who, yes, we all think, a lot of people think what they think about Hunter Bishop, and he was taking over Corbin Carroll, and he's had injury issues and yada yada. But the reality is he's a guy with like big time speed, defensive ability, huge power. Like, if he figures it out, if he puts it together, he could be really good. Grant McCray, who's got 70 grade speed, if he figures it out and he can figure out how to make consistent contact, all of a sudden you've got an elite defender with 50 stolen base potential and pretty sneaky power, I mean, so there are guys, but I don't have like huge confidence in the guys in the upper levels. I think if you're going to, the guys that you're going to see more impact out of are going to probably be the arms. I think Reggie Crawford's the guy that's going to be able to come in later this season and miss bats
September
in the pen. Yeah, he could be in September or August. I could see, Hayden Birdsong being a guy that maybe next season at some point gets called up and missed it and is successful. So, I mean, there are guys. Most of the guys that we think are going to be impact players are probably already in the majors right now. Guys like Ramos and Bailey to whatever extent. But I think the big toolsy guys, the guys that have that superstar potential, I mean, there's not a ton. I think the ones that have that are going to be in the lower levels. Those are the guys like Eldridge, Martin, and Rainer Arias, the guys that are, 18, 19 years old. Well, Martin's 20 now, but that are filling out physically and already have a lot of gifts. Eldridge, earlier they brought up that we don't have the J-Rod or any of those kinds of guys, but I think Eldridge isn't going to be a 5-tool guy or anything, but I could see him being a guy that hits 40 in the middle of the lineup. Like that's what I see in him. It's just a guy that's going to be possibly just an elite middle of the order presence down the road that you build around. So, and yes, and Larry's dead on here. We all knew Ramos had talent. He just needed an opportunity. Yes, we pounded the opportunity from there. Like,
we've been begging
the table for that.
Oh, we've been begging for almost 2 years now. Yeah. So,
yeah. I'm just running through a few of these. I mean, Melvin said he expects him to be back up at some point. And, so yeah, barring injury, no, but also if Slater continues to hit a $140 or $150 or less for another month, then at some point you just rip the Band-Aid off and move on. But
you would think so, but I'm not counting on it. I firmly believe that Matos won't be back until September call-ups.
I wouldn't be shocked either, unless he just sets the world on fire in AAA. Yeah. What age does a prospect stop being a prospect? I don't think there's a specific age necessarily. You have, but I know like on the prospect lists, once they've lost their rookie status, they will drop off the list. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so as soon as they've lost their rookie status, so a guy like Elliot Ramos is no longer on any of their lists. Matos is no longer on the list, even though he's 22 years old and for all intents and purposes still kind of a prospect. He was a top 100 guy last season. Yeah. Before that he passed that threshold. So yeah, that's the short answer, but
it's not so much an age. It's like you said, it's a playing time threshold.
Yeah. At least for those. Now, I would still consider any guy that's not established as a major league player as a
For sure.
prospect. Like that's to me, like I still view them as prospects. Like I still view Casey Schmidt and Luis Matos and who else? Wisely. Like I still view those guys as prospects, even though they've played enough that they're not going to show up on any of these lists.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to be all the time we have for today. So, as always, we're going to keep doing these on Thursdays. From time to time, we may try and sneak one of these out on a different day of the week. I'm going to start. I'll schedule them and I'll blast something out in the community on YouTube and just say like, "Hey, we're going to do one at whatever time." If we are going to,
we almost did a spontaneous one the other day.
Yeah, we kind of tried. It ended up not working out, and honestly, it was for the better. I ended up having stuff come up anyway. Yeah. But yeah, we'll try and get some more of these out. I know a lot of people enjoy the live shows. I enjoy doing these more because I like getting the interaction and everything. But as always, for those that aren't already, like the video, if you can subscribe to the channel, appreciate all the support from everyone. It's been a lot of fun. So,
Tom, to answer your question, no. And I'm not going to elaborate further due to reasons.
Time constraints.
Not even that, due to criticism constraints. Just no. He doesn't offer more at any level. At any level of any baseball in the world. I think he can go to KBO and he would bat $150. I think you could send him to the Mexican League and he would hit 170, if anything. Send him to the Saudi Arabian League and he would struggle there. That's just... Yeah, he's awful. That's all I'm going to say.
Because at the end of the day, he can't hit right-handed pitchers. So, and 70% of pitchers are right-handed. So, I mean, I made the joke all season, and I'm going to keep because the jokes write themselves. But Austin Slater got to face a right-handed position player and couldn't get a hit off him. So, until he proves he can hit a righty, I just don't see the value personally. Yeah. So, all right.
Great show.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll for sure be on next Thursday. Beyond that, like I said, we'll pop something out if we're going to try and jump on any other day.
For sure. Thanks for having me, brother.
All right. Thanks for joining, Dan. Everybody have a good one. Enjoy the day off. And, hopefully they can take care of business against, I think it's Texas tomorrow.
Texas coming up.
In Texas. Yeah. So hopefully they need to turn this around quick. So, all right. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys next week.